Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. For this video, I'd like to continue on the research that I've done in Islamicate Digital Humanities, particularly on the tools that I've used, right? So, so this is what I've shown you last time, right? And you might be wondering, okay, how did I do this, right? What tools did I use to actually generate these visualizations, for example? And for this one, I use Julia, and so that's why the topic of this tutorial is Islamic Digital Humanities using Julia. And what is Julia? By the way, I'm not going to, of course, discuss the the details of Julia as to what this programming language is, but just to at least show you at a high level the tools that I used using Julia. Uh, it's actually, when I say Julia, it's a programming language, right? And so when we say programming language, you're actually like writing some codes to actually create some instructions, right? And 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 I just want to um, emphasize to you that one of the tools that I used for analyzing the Quran using Julia is Quran3.jl. So Quran3.jl, if you can actually search it in Google, right? I'm just using DuckDuckGo here as my search engine, but if you search this in Google, you will find this Quran3.jl. So this is a library in Julia that I've created for accessing the Quran. Because at the end of the day, in order for me to analyze, to come up with this type of analysis, I need to have the Quran first in a digitized form, right? And so I need to be able to query the Quran or look into the chapters of the Quran using a computer, right? And I need to be able to extract the syllables and so on. So what tools did I use for that one? I use Julia, as I mentioned earlier, and within Julia there are some what we call these libraries or packages. These are actually ready-made Julia codes meant for reusability of other users, right? So in this case, like for example, Quran3.jl, this is a library for working with the Quran in Julia, so that you don't have to, create your own instructions in Julia from scratch, right? So I've already built it, and so you can just use it and to analyze the Quran or to access the Quran. So here, for example, just to show you, so this is how you run it in Julia. So for example, I'm going to show you this, of course, in the next succeeding videos, but you write some codes technically in Julia. So one of the codes that you write is something like this. You open Julia application, and then you write some codes like this one. So to use the Quran 3, this is how you run it, right? And so this is also how you load the Quran data, and then after that you will be able to load the Quran data, and then you can then start extracting some data. So for example, this is the one of the data which is coming from tanzil.net. This is the data of the Quran. So for example, here I have here a table containing the columns of chapter, for example, or the surah, and then the verses or the ayah, right? So for example, the first surah, first ayah of the Quran is Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, yeah. And then the second verse is Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and so on and so forth, right? Up until the very last one, which is Minal Jinnati wan Nas, which is from Surah Nas, right? And so this is the Julia library that we are going to use in this series of tutorials, which will help us access the Quran, right? The other tool that I've created, so you can also search Quran 3.jl for the paper itself. It's actually published in ACL, or Association of Computational Linguistic. So this is the paper that I've created, and yeah, you can also look into that. But some of the features that I have in this paper, I've already updated it, right? So some of it might not be applicable anymore. The other library that I also created in Julia is Unier.jl. So it's actually meant for doing some Arabic text analytics. So this is another tool that we're going to use as well. So if I open it, so this one will help us with some, this will provide some tools for doing, say, the diacritization, normalization. So if I actually click this, for example, so this is the basmala, and then if I actually remove the diacritics, I simply run this, the diac, for example, right? So that's it, right? And I'm going to also discuss the, you might be wondering, what is this? This is not Arabic, right? Well, this is actually using Bach-Walter encoding, which we are going to discuss as well, right? But these are just some of the tools that we're going to use for this study. The other last tool that, or library that I've created in Julia is kitab.jl. So if you search for that, okay, it's not, it's not giving us the link to it. So you can, it's actually this one, so kitab.jl. So if I actually open that link, okay, so this kitab.jl will simply help us access some books from open Islamic, from this website, from Kitab Project, of Aga Khan University, and I think there are some partner universities in this one involved as well. Um, but yeah, they have this project which they call Kitab Project, and if you actually look into that, so you will be able to extract all of the knowledge, information, technology, and the Arabic books in this project, right? And so they have several books that they've converted into a digital format, and it was peer reviewed as well. And so you'll be confident that, you know, it's something usable for your research as well. And they have their own ratings, of course, that some of the books were fully peer reviewed, was fully checked, for example, and some are still in progress, for example. So you can also check that as well in this uh, project, right? So this is the link to it, kitab-project.org, right? But going back to the library, so this library that I've created in Julia is meant to, what is this? Is meant to uh, give us an interface to extract the data from Kitab project, right? So instead of going to this website and manually downloading it, I've already created a tool in Julia, and I called it kitab.jl, obviously, to actually extract some books from that website, right? From that Kitab project from Aga Khan University. So we're going to also touch on this one, hoping, right, in this series of tutorial. Now, I just have to mention that some of these tools that I've created are very old already, and not necessarily too very old. But if we actually just, I think if we actually looked into that, for example, for kitab.jl, so it was 3 years ago, so I've not updated it. So just in case you follow the tutorials or the documentation that I have here, for example, it might not work, for example. I still have to check, by the way, right? But this is something that you can also look into, and hoping we'll be able to touch on this one, and I'll also update it as we go along in this series of tutorial. But yeah, I guess that's the end for this. That's the end of this video. I hope you learned something. Assalamu alaikum.